Spain won the 2026 World Cup. Ferran Torres, 106th minute, extra time, MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. 1 goal. 0-0 after 90 minutes. 1-0 after 120. Spain are world champions for the second time in their history. Lamine Yamal lifted the trophy at 19 years old in front of 82,000 people. That should be the story. That should be the only story. A 19-year-old Spaniard, born on the same night France beat Romania in the opening game of Euro 2004, 22 years later holding the World Cup above his head in the country where football's biggest tournament just concluded. That is the story football deserved. That is the story the finals football produced. And that is the story that was immediately and almost completely buried under what happened in the moments after the final whistle blew. Because in the seconds between the referee's last whistle and the beginning of the trophy ceremony, the World Cup ended with a punch, a shove, a throat jab, a brawl, and a group of players turning their backs on the presentation of the sport's most important prize. And then, hours later, FIFA opened not one investigation, not two, but multiple simultaneous disciplinary proceedings covering players, a coaching staff member, the Argentine Football Association, and conduct across 2 separate matches of the same tournament. So let's go through every single thing that happened, in order, with every detail, because the scale of what occurred in New Jersey on July 19, 2026 deserves to be understood completely before FIFA's response to it is assessed. Spain won the match through the kind of performance that defines their footballing identity at its best. 106 minutes of possession, patience, and precision. Ferran Torres, the substitute who came on in extra time, struck the winning goal with the composure of a finisher who understood the weight of the moment and refused to be overwhelmed by it. Emiliano Martinez, Argentina's goalkeeper, had an extraordinary match, 11 saves, a record for any goalkeeper in a World Cup final. He was the reason the match lasted as long as it did. He was the reason Argentina remained in contention deep into extra time, despite playing with 10 men for the majority of the second half and all of extra time after Enzo Fernandez was dismissed. Fernandez received his second yellow card of the match in the 93rd minute. He became the 6th player ever shown a red card in a World Cup final. The sending off changed the shape of the match permanently. Argentina, already struggling to contain a Spanish side that had dominated possession from the first whistle, now had to defend an extra half hour with a numerical disadvantage. Martinez's saves kept them in it. Torres ended it. And then the whistle blew. What happened in the next 3 minutes has now been viewed hundreds of millions of times across every social media platform on the planet. Spain's substitutes, the players who had been sitting on the bench for 120 minutes, rushed onto the pitch to celebrate with their teammates. That is normal. That happens at the end of every major tournament. Players who weren't involved in the action join the people who were and share the moment. But somewhere in that rush of Spanish substitutes onto the MetLife turf, something was said or done that ignited what followed. Nahuel Molina, Argentina's right back, moved toward Rodri. Rodri, Spain's captain, Manchester City midfielder, Ballon d'Or winner, a player whose composure on the football pitch is legendary, was moving across the pitch when Molina squared up to Rodri. Broadcast footage from multiple angles, including footage that BBC Sport captured and published immediately after the final whistle, appears to show Molina striking Rodri in the midriff as the Spanish captain ran across the pitch. Molina then bumped Rodri in the chest. That was the flashpoint.
Spain's Eric Garcia came across to intervene, and then Leandro Paredes arrived. What Paredes did in the next 90 seconds is the reason FIFA opened a disciplinary investigation that could result in the longest ban ever handed to a player in the aftermath of a World Cup final. He flew toward Garcia and knocked him to the ground. When Garcia got back to his feet, Paredes jabbed him in the throat. That is not a push, that is not a shove, A jab to the throat of an opponent is a deliberate act of violence that, under FIFA's disciplinary code, carries an automatic minimum 3-match ban for violent conduct, with scope for the ban to be extended significantly based on the severity of the action. And Paredes was not finished. With Argentina's coach Lionel Scaloni on the pitch trying to separate players and wag his finger at the situation he was watching unfold, Paredes turned from Garcia to Gavi. Spain's 21-year-old midfielder was attempting to move away from the situation when Paredes grabbed him, spun him to the ground, and appeared to push into his face while holding him by the bib of his shirt. Multiple Spanish teammates stepped in to shield Gavi. Spain's Borja Iglesias crashed into Paredes. The brawl had now involved at minimum 8 or 9 players from both sides. At that moment, from the edge of the chaos, Argentina's assistant coach Roberto Ayala approached Dani Olmo. Ayala is a former Argentina international, capped over 100 times, a respected figure in South American football who had served as part of Scaloni's coaching staff. Television footage shows Ayala swinging his right arm into Olmo's face. Olmo, to his enormous credit, did not react. He did not retaliate. He stood there and absorbed what had just happened and walked away from it. Ayala later described the incident publicly on a radio program in Valencia, the city where he played club football for years. He said he was obviously sorry. He said that because of the position he holds, he cannot allow a feeling or whatever he may receive from the other side to change his mood and his actions. He said he regretted it. He said it was more of a push than anything else. He said it was not a punch. He said it was a reaction to something that was said, and he said if he sees Olmo, he will apologize to him in person. Broadcast footage shows a swing. Ayala says it was a push. FIFA will review the footage and make that determination. The referee Slavko Vincic was still on the pitch when Paredes was shown a straight red card for violent conduct. It was a decision that came too late to prevent what had already happened, and that was made in the chaos of a brawl rather than in the controlled environment of a VAR review. Molina was not shown a card on the pitch, despite his apparent strike on Rodri. That means FIFA's disciplinary process will have to address Molina's conduct separately, without the basis of a red card already issued. And then, as Spain's players began making their way to the podium for the trophy ceremony, something happened that, in a different context, might have been less significant, but in the context of everything Argentina had done in the previous minutes, became the image that circulated fastest on every social media platform. Argentina's players turned their backs on the ceremony. As Spain filed up to receive their medals and prepared to lift the trophy, Argentina's players rotated away from the stage and faced the stands where their supporters were seated. They did not watch Spain lift the World Cup. They did not witness the presentation. Whether this was a genuine expression of grief and inability to watch their opponents celebrate, or whether it was a deliberate act of disrespect toward the ceremony, is a question that FIFA's investigation will examine. Roberto Ayala, in his same radio interview, explained the moment from Argentina's perspective. He said the Argentine players were close to the Spanish squad during the celebrations. He said that after that, they went toward the stands where some family members had experienced problems to make sure they were all right. He presented it as a welfare check rather than a deliberate snub. Dani Olmo was asked directly after the match about Argentina's players turning their backs during the ceremony. His response was one of the most widely shared quotes of the entire tournament. He said he thinks it is also important to think about the values you want to convey to the outside. He said players are role models for many generations and for many children, and he thinks they should also be role models in everything and for the better. He did not name anyone, he did not accuse anyone specifically. He simply said what values look like and let the watching world draw its own conclusions. Gary Neville, one of the most respected voices in English football media, called the scenes disgraceful and unacceptable. Alan Shearer said the same. The reaction across every football media platform, from traditional broadcasters to social media accounts with millions of followers, was unified in a way that football reactions rarely are. Nobody defended what happened in those 3 minutes after the final whistle. Nobody argued that the brawl was justified. Nobody suggested Argentina's behavior represented anything other than what multiple pundits called a low point for international football.
And then FIFA issued its response. And the response was multiple simultaneous investigations rather than immediate punishments. FIFA opened a disciplinary investigation into Argentina over the post-final incidents, specifically covering Paredes for violent conduct, Molina for potential violent conduct, Ayala for his involvement with Olmo, and several Argentina players for their conduct during the trophy presentation ceremony. All of this was confirmed in a formal FIFA statement that said the governing body would review referee Vinčić's match report and the reports of the match delegates, together with video footage, before deciding on sanctions. But that was not the only investigation FIFA opened against Argentina following the tournament's conclusion. A separate case was already active. During the semifinal against England, Argentina midfielder Giovanni Lo Celso had displayed a banner in the MetLife Stadium after the match, bearing the slogan, "Las Malvinas son Argentinas." The Malvinas, known in English as the Falkland Islands, are the subject of a territorial dispute between Argentina and the United Kingdom that has existed since 1982 and that extends far beyond football. FIFA's regulations on political messages are explicit. Displaying political content inside a World Cup stadium is a violation. The UK government expressed official criticism of the banner's display, and FIFA opened a separate case against the Argentine Football Association for potential breaches of regulations on political messages. Two simultaneous FIFA investigations, one covering violent conduct and conduct during the trophy ceremony, one covering the political banner from the semifinal. Both opened against the same national association within days of the tournament concluding. Now here is where the complexity of this situation requires honest and complete analysis, because the question that every commentator, every pundit, every national federation, and now the European Parliament lawmakers who have been calling for FIFA investigations during this tournament are asking is the same one. Will these investigations produce punishments proportionate to what the footage shows? Or will they produce the minimum possible sanctions applied with the minimum possible urgency, the same pattern that critics have argued characterized FIFA's handling of Argentina-related decisions throughout the entire tournament? The precedent for violent conduct bans under FIFA's disciplinary code is clear on paper. At least 3 matches for violent conduct, with the code citing additional disciplinary measures may also be imposed in all cases. Paredes' actions against Garcia and Gavi are documented across multiple camera angles, showing a throat jab and a spin and push to the ground. If those 2 incidents are treated as separate acts of violent conduct, the bans stack. 3 matches become 6, possibly more. Molina faces a separate assessment because he did not receive a card on the pitch. FIFA can cite him independently for what the broadcast footage shows as a swing and a chest bump against the captain of the opposing team. If that is classified as violent conduct, another minimum 3-match ban applies. Ayala, as a member of coaching staff rather than a registered player, faces a different category of assessment, but one that is no less serious. A coaching staff member making physical contact with an opposing player during post-match chaos is a category of misconduct that FIFA has sanctioned before and that its disciplinary code covers under provisions related to team officials. And the Argentine Football Association itself could face financial penalties and other institutional sanctions for the conduct of its players and staff. The mathematics of what these investigations could produce, if applied strictly and according to the letter of the code, is significant. Multiple players facing bans extending into the South American World Cup qualifying campaign, a coaching staff member potentially suspended, the federation potentially fined. Whether that is what happens is the question that the European Parliament lawmakers, who have spent the last 2 weeks calling for investigations into FIFA during this tournament, are now watching with particular attention.
because the pattern they identified, the Balogun red card reversal, the Egypt complaint, the decisions around Argentina's matches throughout the knockout rounds, all pointed in one direction throughout the tournament. And now, FIFA is investigating Argentina, and the question is whether this investigation produces the outcome the evidence demands, or whether it produces the minimum possible outcome that allows FIFA to say it acted. Denny Olmo gave his answer about values. Ayala gave his answer about regret and personal apologies. Gary Neville and Alan Shearer gave their answers about disgrace and unacceptability. Dozens of millions of social media users who watched the brawl in real time gave their answers through the clips they shared and the comments they left. Now FIFA has to give its answer, in writing, with specific sanctions applied to specific individuals based on footage that is available from multiple angles and that leaves very little room for alternative interpretation. The 2026 World Cup is over. Spain are world champions. Ferran Torres scored the goal, Lamine Yamal lifted the trophy, and somewhere in the documentation that FIFA's disciplinary committee is now reviewing, the question of what this tournament meant for the integrity of the sport is being answered one investigation at a time. What do you think? Do you believe FIFA will impose punishments on Paredes, Molina, Ayala, and the Argentine Football Association that are proportionate to what the footage shows? And with two simultaneous FIFA investigations now open against Argentina, including the Malvinas banner from the semifinal, do you think the 2026 World Cup has permanently changed how football fans and institutions view the relationship between Argentina and FIFA? Let us know in the comments, like and subscribe for complete coverage of the disciplinary outcomes as they are announced, and share this with every football fan who watched that final whistle and deserved to see Spain lift the trophy without everything that followed.